Welcome to your ninth episode of Roo Code Office Hours. My name is Hannes Rudolph. I am your community manager, and I am here with some guests who are going to help me answer questions and discuss important topics that you have deemed important through asking questions right in the channel here or posting on our subreddit, which is Roo Code. So let's give it a start. We have one here about indexing. And they have asked, what are the main use cases for code-based indexing and how can we get the best benefit from it?
Right. So code-based indexing helps the model or Roo code understand the code base using fewer tool calls, basically. So right now, if you don't have code-based indexing enabled and you ask a question about the code base, Roo has to go and search for any relevant files, usually uses like an exact search. So if it doesn't know what it's looking for, it needs to retry multiple times up until it finds what it's looking for. It basically needs to know exactly what it's looking for. With code-based indexing, it can ask some questions about the code base, literally just like asking questions, and the results will be relevant, and then it can decide, okay, I want to go and read these files to better understand the results, and it can basically understand the code base way faster than going file by file, reading file by file, or listing directories, for example. It's definitely
Okay.
something you want to enable if you can and test it out.
Okay, I've got it here. I've got code-based indexing shown on my screen here under experimental. If you go to code-based indexing and you enable it, you fill the information out. Our docs have reasonably detailed instructions on what to do with these fields. You hit save and it starts to index. Now, when we ask it a question, let's see. Um, I don't know what are boomerang tasks. Let's see what it comes up. Oh, we didn't want to use Opus for that one. Let's go back to this. I don't know if it's going to use Codebase search or not. Okay, it did not use Codebase search. We are just in the process of some tweaks to the system prompt uh, that are going to sort of push it to use the Codebase search, the indexing search functionality first. We're hoping to get those in there this week. But regardless, Codebase indexing is currently still experimental, and it's something that is near and dear to our hearts. We've been working on it for a long time. We really believe that it will make the Roo's understanding of your code base much more thorough. And by all means, it's not the only tool that Roo will use. Roo uses a variety of tools to understand your code base, including a listing of your files, a listing of the files that are open, and such. So I have just asked it a question: what are boomerang tasks? And so it has looked through our code base and found some references to boomerang tasks. Now I'm going to say, can you dig deeper? First off, I'll read the answer here. Looking at the broader code base, Roo Code has various modes: code, architect, ask, and debug, and tools that work together. Boomerang task likely works in conjunction with these modes to help users break down complex development tasks into smaller mode-specific subtasks that can be handled more effectively. Okay, can you dig deeper into the code mechanisms? Maybe that's too broad of a question. I don't know.
There are two questions about code-based indexing. One is, would a dedicated MCP for code search work as good? So it would work as good as current MCPs work. You might have noticed that Roo sometimes doesn't use your MCP unless you explicitly tell it to. We're trying to get Roo to use code-based indexing more often with any any questions that it might have about the code base. So it will work well on MCP for that, but maybe with code-based indexing, Roo will be more eager to use it than an MCP server.
Okay, so what you can see here is I did again have to tell it to use code based search, but this is experimental, so we are going to fix that system prompt so it doesn't do that, and my demos look cooler. It searched for several strings here. It found a bunch of different references to different files, and then it read three files simultaneously. This is also um, an experimental feature. You can find it under your settings, experimental, and use concurrent file reads. Then, after reading those files, give us a more detailed explanation. Why Boomerang? The name Boomerang is perfect because tasks are thrown to specialized modes to handle specific parts. They return with the results back to the parent task. The parent task continues where it left off, now with the completed subtask results. So Roo has effectively answered this question. Let's give this a try when we don't have indexing enabled and see what happens. So I'm going to go back into this task and try to get the exact, okay, there. Oh, so I'm going to copy that or just copy it here. What are Boomerang tasks? Let's see what happens.
So there's a question about memory and code-based indexing. Share memories between Roo and other agents. Can code-based indexing work for this? So code-based indexing and memory, I would say they're different things. Code-based indexing creates an index of the code base that the
Okay.
model can ask about semantically. So it doesn't need to read files to understand, just ask a question how you would ask a question. How does this feature work, for example? And it will get relevant results. It's not memory in the sense that it will remember changes that you make to files. It would just have understanding of the current code base. I hope that answers that question.
So I guess we've struggled with what to implement and how, and we decided on code-based indexing for a variety of reasons. Code-based indexing provides an understanding of what your data, what your code base currently is, whereas a memory bank does not. It provides a understanding of what a bunch of summaries have indicated your code base is. If there is something inaccurate in the code base, there's no way for Roo to detect that. And I have found working inaccuracies in the memory bank. I have found that when there are these inaccuracies in the memory bank, sometimes what will happen is Roo will think, oh, hey, this is how it's supposed to be. Ignore that point. And so, memory banks can serve as a repository for various instructions for your workflow. We believe that using code-based indexing with appropriately formatted and written rules files will give you a much better result. Okay, so I have asked, Roo Code has come up with an answer pretty similar. Let's compare the. Oh, I guess we can't really compare the token cost. When I did this before, sometimes Roo Code comes up with the answer, sometimes it doesn't. In both situations, the context used when using indexing is much lower. In this case, the term boomerang was sort of I think there's one or two mentions of the word boomerang within Roo. So searching this 100% works. You'll see that Roo's current state without indexing, it still has a pretty good handle on being able to find where things are. And so indexing is not taking Roo from the Stone Ages by any means, but it's giving Roo the tool to understand a large code base much easier. One key useful or use case I found with it is when you're looking for a specific aspect to correct. If you're looking to change, I don't know, implement dark mode in your front end application, being able to search down all of the elements that need adjustment is not something that Roo is currently very well equipped to do. Indexing gives Roo the ability to search and then double check its work to see if, hey, did I miss anything, whilst using less context. So that's our case for it. I guess the worst case scenario is that in some tasks it doesn't perform, that doesn't really add anything to the equation. But I have not seen a situation where it's actually really subtracted from the task.
Yeah, it's not about, hey, Roo before couldn't find stuff on the code base. It's about making the process of understanding the code base faster and simpler, because it can simply just ask a question, like literally a simple question about the code base will find relevant results instead of having to use tools to list files or search. You can just do it with one single step, basically.
Okay, let's get some questions or answers from our other guests.
I can see a question here. Can we use local LLM for code indexing? Are they good enough? I would say they are good enough and they are on par with models that are provided by OpenAI, especially if you have a good enough computer to run them.
Yeah, actually, Nomic, the model available for Olama that we have listed right now, uh, it's probably better than the three small model from OpenAI. So you can definitely use a local model, and it will perform pretty much the same than using an OpenAI model for sure.
One
Yep.
thing that I
Go
would
ahead.
like to say, if you are indeed using OpenAI models, I would recommend you guys not to use the ADA model because not only is it outdated, but even the smaller model they have is on par with that model itself. So I avoid using it.
Okay, Ellie, do you have any questions or input?
I think we can do the discussion about memory bank and code-based indexing and why code-based indexing is better. Also, I think that code-based indexing is better than feeding your entire code base to the model because even if the model has like a million contexts, it's not going to be as efficient if you can just index the code base beforehand and then you can just ask the AI to query that. It saves a lot of cost and it's going to be a lot more accurate because relying on the size of the model is not, I don't think it's that good because once you touch like 500K tokens, even if Gemini has like a million, the result is sometimes not as good. It's a lot cheaper if you index your code base doing any search than feeding everything to the model.
Yeah.
It's basically about providing Roo with more tools to understand,
Yeah,
uh, not limiting to just an exact search or listing file, but also giving it another tool to hopefully understand the code base better for sure.
Yeah.
also it syncs with your project. So if you add something, the code base index is always get synced. Whereas with memory bank, you have to do like, "Oh, I've done this, you should update this memory bank." And sometimes it fails because I've tried using memory bank in the past. And then like I told it, please update this specific part. And instead of updating, it just appends the thing that I want to replace. It just confuses itself. It's a lot better to just use indexing. Like,
Okay. I think we've got code indexing discussion out of the way. Um, let's see. I have some more questions here. How do I install and use MCP using Roo Code? Like, let's say I have a local MCP or even Cloud Desktop. Okay, so I'm going to go to docs.roocode.com and I'm going to go to our MCP section here and look at our recommended servers. This context server is our first choice general purpose MCP server. It's really good for understanding documentation. Does anyone else want to jump on here and explain a little more of what Context 7 does before I show our viewers how I'll install this in Roo Code?
basically, like Context 7 is they have like a service that you can use to they do this kind of like indexing of documentation from projects on GitHub. So if you go to like context7.com, if I'm not mistaken, you can find a lot of libraries here. And then if you don't find libraries that you want, you can just press like add docs and copy and paste the GitHub URL or add the llms.txt. Like last night I was trying to find documentation from LLM-UI. Couldn't find it on Context 7. They have this way of adding new library that hasn't been indexed on Context 7 MCP. So easy. So you can just, yeah, you can just like add docs. Look, it already exists. Yeah, it's pretty good. And it's a lot better than just adding your own llms.txt, because if the llms.txt is like 300,000 tokens, you have to use module that supports that 300,000 tokens. But if you use context 7, you can just tell it to, oh, please find how to use this library. Like, how do I initialize this library? It will kind of like code-based indexing, but for documentation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It saves a lot of your time.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm going to go over here and follow the instructions. Okay. Installing into Roo Code. Paste this in to our MCP servers. And we're going to go here. Enable MCP servers. I'm going to uncheck this box. That's some unneeded tokens. I'm not using Roo to create the MCP server today. Then I'm going to edit my project level MCPs. And I'm going to paste this right in here. I'm going to save. And ta-da! Here we have our library. So I'm going to use it and ask a question. Let's go to ask mode. Does ask mode have MCPs? Yes, it does. I always forget that one. Okay. What question should we ask? Oh, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Hi.
Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
No problem. Okay. So I'm going to look here. Which docs should I ask it a question about?
The question was, can Roo make this process automatically? Like, can you tell Roo, hey, this is the MCP that I want to add, and will it modify its own settings file to add it? Or
Well,
does this process still manual?
let's see. Let's see what happens.
I'm so glad you asked this because I have been trying to figure this out all day. And I asked Ellie today. Ellie, I asked you about MCPs today, and you gave me a great answer. I've been trying to experiment with your flow, your suggestions since then.
Yeah, context 7 is really nice. Like, it helps me to guide the AI to not use the old documentation and use the latest one. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
The question that Dan asked is a very good question because I've been trying to understand exactly how to use MCPs. I've been very confused if Roo is aware that I would like to use MCP by default, or do I have to say use context 7 every time? And I've been trying to find resources online about how other more seasoned developers who use Roo use this feature. And I felt really stupid because I couldn't find a good answer. So yeah, I would like to know how you guys are doing that.
By the way, Roo did not install it itself, but we're going to make some tweaks to the system prompt so that when you ask it to install an MCP server, it will ask you whether you're trying to install it globally or in your project, and then it will attempt to install it accordingly. In this case, it did install it. It just didn't install it where we wanted it. It didn't. It put it in a JSON, but not in the one we wanted. So we now have it
Yeah,
installed.
and to answer.
Oh, go ahead.
To answer the question about MCPs, sometimes Roo will use them by itself. So, for example, context 7, if you are asking about a specific library that is available on it, it might use it, sure. But I found that it's more consistent when you add custom instructions, or you can also create a custom mode and specifically mention use this MCP server to answer questions, or a custom instruction if you need to search for this library or a library that you have no knowledge of, use the MCP server. So
putting in special instructions basically for your project that give it guidance on when to use that tool. Because by default, when you have an MCP server added, the tools are added to Roo, but when to use them is not added to Roo because you've just added a set of tools. Right now, we have, as I showed earlier, when we enabled Codebase search, the indexing, Roo didn't just automatically use it. Sometimes it will, but we need to add to the system prompt, hey, this is the use cases. Otherwise, you have to explicitly call that tool. And so building this into your system or your project rules really, really helps to offer that guidance.
Like, what are good rules to have for each project? Like, what kind of rules do you put when you want to vibe code an entire project, especially if you're using an MCP like Context 7 and you would like your LLMs to have awareness of the updated docs?
Can I
Dan?
give an answer to that?
Oh, no, there we go. Go ahead.
It's all about the workflow, right? Basically, I normally prefer to use a few custom mode suites, I would rather call them. So for mine, there are different modes, and one of the modes that I have is a researcher mode. And the instructions for that researcher mode is to specifically use a few MCPs that I wanted to use. I needed to go to use the web search functionality, use an MCP for that. Sometimes I need it to use the context 7 MCP, and it's clearly stated in the rules that I have put into those modes. And then another thing is how you maintain the workflow, right? What you basically want here is to trigger that particular mode after the project has initiated, right? Before it starts any coding, you needed to first research things, document them down, and then start implementing those things. So that workflow is essential in getting things right in the first go itself.
Okay, this is very insightful. Thank you for
One of
answering.
one of our community members dropped this into the chat. Here are some instructions. I'm going to show them on screen. Always use the Context 7 MCP server to reference documentation for libraries. Remember to call resolve library ID, which I believe is the tool name right here. Before calling get library docs, information obtained from Context 7 should be prioritized over existing knowledge. Or the tokens start with 5,000, but then increase to 20,000 if the first search didn't give relevant documentation. This is referencing how much to return when you do a Context 7 search, how much content to return. Only search 3 times maximum for any specific piece of documentation. If you don't get what you need after 3 attempts, use a general web search. So this here is straightforward instructions for when Roo can and should use the Context 7 MCP. So I've made it into a Roo
General
rules
web
and saved
search.
it.
I've never thought of adding use general web search as an instruction. So if I do this,
You'd need
will it?
another MCP for that.
Ah, okay. And which MCP do you recommend for that?
I've heard
I
about the Brave web search. People use it. I haven't used
Yeah,
it myself.
search is pretty
For
good.
general web searches, I prefer using Perplexity myself. So you can probably use similar services.
Two
Okay.
options that I would recommend would be one would be the Tivoli Search MCP, and then another would be the Vertex AI MCP. What it basically does, it uses the Google grounding with search facility and produces the result.
Okay. Can I ask another question about
I
MCPs, or am I
yes,
hijacking the conversation?
MCP seem to be something that our users are very interested in. We've been getting a lot of questions about that and indexing and such. So we do have other questions to answer from the Reddit thread, but we still have 30 minutes. So feel free to hijack away.
Okay, because I've been reading new vulnerabilities, or not necessarily vulnerabilities, but new security concerns regarding MCP and prompt injections. I'm very new to this whole world of coding with agentic AI. So I wanted to know if there are security concerns that I should be aware of, or if there's something I should research before using MCPs, because I keep hearing about prompt injections, and I wanted to ask the experts about that.
Well, we
Yeah.
have Chirac just joined us. Do you have an answer for us? Oh, his mic is not on today. Okay, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I guess you can. So in my case, what I do is basically you do the same thing when I do when installing any software, right? So if I'm installing something that is open source, you can usually see if the repo is used. It has, stars, conversations, people discussing issues. Basically, if it's a known tool or is something that someone made and nobody uses, in that case, that is probably a good idea. There's lists. I think Llama is a good place to search for MCPs that are safe, or you you can search the official MCP list that Anthropic has. It's a repo that Anthropic has. We can link it later. But basically, it lists all the official MCPs made by Anthropic. And also, you can, for example, for Docker or GitHub, they already have their official MCPs that you can use.
Yeah, I've heard that some people were exposed to vulnerabilities from the GitHub MCP itself. But I mean, I skimmed through the issue and it seemed to have been like some people think it was a user misuse, like it was a vulnerability caused by the user not really understanding how to keep things secure. But I remember there was a lot of talk about it like a week ago, maybe, or a few days ago. I don't remember exactly.
The best thing to do, in my opinion, to prevent stuff like prompt injection from happening is if you're trying a new MCP that you're not sure about, disable auto approve for the tools and disable auto approve for the root tools and also the MCP tools. So you can see the behavior first and accept, allow every single tool call. If you see that something is going on, that Roo is trying to create a file that it shouldn't, or you know executing a command, you can catch it before it happens. So that's what I would recommend, or for MCPs that you're not sure about.
Okay, so just an update. When I asked Roo to install that MCP, it did actually install it where it was supposed to. The only problem is it did not refresh the MCP interface here like it should. So we're going to fix that today because it absolutely 100% put it exactly where it was supposed to go. Here, let's look. Put it in the Roo folder. Right. Oh, I need to remove these. Those are remnants. Put it right here. So Roo followed its instructions and it did what it was supposed to do. I apologize for trash talking Roo and saying it couldn't figure it out. It 100% did. It's just needs a little tweaking here. We'll get on that this afternoon. Sorry about that, folks. Okay. Let's move on to another question from our subreddit. Okay. Can we include a simple bell sound when generation is complete? Progress bar, elevator music when waiting, etc. So, they said, or an LLM call to whisper that narrates what it's doing in a fun way, possibly steer results in real time. Okay, that is a pretty broad question. So I'm going to stick to the beginning part of it. And they asked about a simple bell sound when the generation is complete. I'm going to show you. There's this notifications area. You go to it and you enable sound effects. Now, when it is complete, you will get a simple bell sound. Ta-da! So, to that user, yes, we will implement that. Have implemented that. Next question is, are you planning to implement functionality that allows a task to be split into multiple subtasks, which can then be delegated to different LLM models to work on in parallel, where dependencies and conflicts do not exist? The architect mode would coordinate the delegation of independent subtasks across multiple models. It would also be useful if the user could define the number of models allowed to operate in parallel. Is this technically feasible, and do you consider it a valuable direction? So this is a improvement to Boomerang task orchestration, which this user is talking about. And we're absolutely digging into Boomerang, additional Boomerang functionality, including parallel task orchestration. Exactly how it's going to work, I couldn't tell you just yet. But if one of my other guests here who has some knowledge onto the technical feasibility of this process would like to speak to it, Dan, you're the most
I've seen a
knowledgeable about the
couple.
code base.
I've seen a couple of proposals about uh, improving basically the Boomerang flow or the orchestrator
Yeah.
flow. I've seen specifically what this person is asking. Yes, it is possible. Someone already has a proof of concept or a work in progress about this. Basically the orchestrator can spawn two tasks at the same time and have one basically have one complete while the other one is working, I think. If not, then they are completed sequentially. But you can already create new tasks, multiple tasks at the same time. That's what I've seen so far. So it's definitely possible and something that the contributors are working on. If that becomes something that we can, add to Orchestrator, we will definitely will. But it's
We've
something that is
taught
being worked on. Yeah.
we've internally been discussing iterating on Boomerang task orchestration, and there are some ideas that are going for review today, as well as I think one or two PRs that we're looking to polish up and get merged that basically add some simple functionality for um, grouping the tasks. Then we're going to work on things like grouping costing and additional features that this user talked about. Parallel tasks is one of the more complex aspects of this improvement. And so it is something we're looking at, but Roo going faster is secondary to Roo doing a good job. So parallel tasks will not be the primary focus of this. It is something that 100% we're open to and exploring, but we don't want to get stuck on that at the expense of really improving how task orchestration works. One of the things we've really noticed is that it's not always clear what's going on in the task orchestration process. You start a task, it says, okay, I'm going to plan this out. Boom, it jumps into architect mode. Architect mode's doing its thing. Now your context is back at zero. And it's sort of like, well, hold on. My cost was just, 10 cents and context was at, 11,000. Now why is my context at zero? And if you're paying really close attention to the process, and you know, you can see that a new task was spawned. And so the new task stands alone from the parent task. And this is sort of confusing. So we do want to get that ironed out. Any of the other guests have a comment about this? Ellie?
Yeah, I think the possibility of expanding orchestrator workflow is good, but like we still have a lot of stuff that can be prioritized first. It is definitely something that we look forward to. It's just that the prep work that needs to be done to get there is quite a lot already in our plate. So I don't think it's going to be arrived in a while. It's the existing stuff.
Well, the good news is that we are. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Uh, I was just done.
The good news is that we're going to be dedicating some internal resources towards these types of development. We're really looking for users to uh, present to us ideas through our detailed feature request and our issues board that are well thought out, that have technical considerations outlined, and have viable use cases for end users. And when they've done this, we're looking at taking these and fast tracking them instead of saying, hey, okay, you contributor, you do all the work. We're looking at actually putting some development horsepower from full-time devs into it to make these ideas happen. We really want to invest in scraping these ideas, extracting these ideas from various community members. We found that people that have great ideas don't always have the horsepower to contribute, and the other way around is often true as well. So yeah, please feel free. We want to hear your ideas, and we're going to be going through um, our feature requests as well and looking for hints as to what people think would be really great and maybe some ideas there that uh, are sort of diamonds in the rough that aren't necessarily something that people have thought about that much, but somebody did post into our feature requests, and it's just one of those really brilliant ideas. So we don't want to ignore that kind of thing. We love to hear it from you. Feel free to just idea dump us all you want.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
currently improving the template for feature requests, so hopefully more people can fill them out more easily.
Yes, that would be absolutely awesome. Okay, what's happening here? Proceed while running. I guess it's doing its install. I think it needs input, doesn't it? Okay, so next question here. Can you clarify what to do if one task in Boomerang is failing? That's actually a really great question. So right now we are in code mode. We spawned this task from what's it called? From orchestrator mode, Boomerang mode, and let's just say theoretically that this task is or hypothetically that this task is failing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to exit it and just kill it. Or maybe perhaps there was a problem in it and it broke. I'm going to hit terminate. It goes back to orchestrator, and I'm going to hit cancel. We're going to add a mechanism to stop this so you don't have to hit cancel right away. And then I'm going to say, oops, restart that subtask. I broke subtask halfway through. Something like that. I mean, I don't have to speak to it like that. I have a habit of sort of just chatting to Roo like it was a Siri that actually did its job. And here we go. So we had we have a subtask that has spawned again. So to that user, that is one way to interrupt a task and basically cancel it and restart it. Also, what you can do is if you have checkpoints enabled, here I'm going to enable automatic checkpoints. I'm going to cancel this process. And actually, I'm going to go back here and say, oops, one more time. I interrupted. There, be more blunt. Okay, so here we go. It's starting. Let's give it a chance to make a few changes. Let it do its read. Tried to read a file that wasn't there, apparently. Okay, let's
Talking about
make.
checkpoints, I do have a question here.
Okay, sure.
It's from earlier in the chat. It says that right now Roo creates checkpoints after editing the files. Wouldn't it make more sense to make those checkpoints before it edits the file?
That's a great idea.
I think we already have either an issue open for that or a PR. I think I saw that. Basically, yes, we do want to create the checkpoint before. Sometimes the checkpoint takes a little bit longer to be created, and Roo edits the file before the checkpoint is created. So that could be considered an issue, and I think we already have an issue open for that.
Okay. Well, let's. Do you want to put it on the list for us to address today, and we'll get something
Yep.
done? That doesn't seem like a huge refactor. Um, okay. Looking at my screen here again, what I have is Roo has been editing away, doing its thing, and let's just say for some reason this task um, got context poisoning. It went south. I was using a different model that wasn't Opus, and it didn't work for me. So I come back here, hit cancel, and I'm going to go and hit this button and go restore files and task. And say, oops, can you spawn that one more time? I broke it again. Okay, I even apologized to the large language model. So when AI takes over the world, hopefully it remembers and doesn't kill me first.
Hi, Hannes, how are you?
Oh, hey, how's it going, Shrek?
And good. Sorry, I got a call just as you were speaking. I immediately got a call, so I just stayed mute.
No, I get that. Okay.
So, what's the
So
topic today?
the topic is just rando questions that we got from our Reddit community. We've discussed indexing, we've discussed some MCP stuff, and now a little bit of Boomerang. And the question we're trying to answer now is how to handle when a Boomerang task gets interrupted or is failing, I guess they
Okay.
asked. So for some reason, our API is doing its thing. It's hanging, but it's trying to restart that subtask. I guess it's really writing along a book here. Opus can be a bit slow sometimes. I'm blaming it on Opus. It's a brilliant model, but I'm telling you, um, some days it seems like it's a victim of cold weather. Okay, it
I've
said
been
no.
having issues with Open Router overall today,
Hmm.
even with Sonnet.
Well, it's up and running. It's making the subtask again. So this was how we interrupted it. We went back to that checkpoint, and yeah, we've restarted that. So all the changes that were made in the last task are no longer there. Okay. Do we have you guys been paying attention to the chat here? Maybe we have some questions that came in directly from the Discord community. Nope. Silence.
I have a question. Can I ask?
Yes. You bet.
Okay. I have high hopes for indexing. I've set it up yesterday. And, a lot of the time when I try to use Roo Code, sometimes
Mhm.
things don't go as planned. And what I like to do is just start a new task. So I was wondering if I could utilize indexing to allow Roo to understand my code base super quickly so that it gets up to speed, and just continue from there on. I've tried doing that, but I'm wondering if this is a use case that other people are using,
Well,
You know what I mean?
this is 100% the use case. Um, as I demonstrated earlier, I was able to jump into uh, the Roo code repository and ask Roo some questions about it, and it is able to find out exactly um, what I'm talking about. So if you start a new task, you can simply just say, hey, here are the changes that I need. That being said, you do need to provide some beginning context. You don't necessarily have to kill it with the context, but making a clear ask is better than vague instructions like, "Oh, it's broken, fix it." That works sometimes, but you're rolling the dice. So yes, the use case you mentioned is 100% the most useful use case, in my opinion.
Okay. And I wanted to ask also about version control because I have been also playing around with the checkpoints, but I'm wondering how other people are using Git and version control. how are you guys incorporating Roo with Git and version control into Roo Code? And do you think there's a feature that could help get Roo to utilize version control automatically as checkpoints, or as you know what I'm trying to say?
So basically, you're saying at milestones during the task process, making a commit with those and with the appropriate commit notes automatically.
Yeah, as a checkpoint or something like that.
Well,
You know?
checkpoints sort of stand separate in the sense that they exist to help sort of rewind your sprint, your current task process. If you need to interrupt it, pull back and redo something. But Git version control works quite effectively when it comes to um, going to, going, okay, here, I'm at a place, I'm at a milestone. I'm going to say notes here, and I'm going to commit them. There is a way to do this in your currently that isn't built in, but you can utilize Git command line with a custom mode. You can build a custom mode that um, will commit. You could say after each subtask, if any changes have been made. So switch to this custom mode called MC or called Git mode, and look at what changes have been made using Git command line and write commit notes and commit the changes. And then it would go back to orchestrator mode and then do its next subtask, come back and do that again. And this does add some additional context, but this is a primary example of where Roo's customization allows you to really make your workflow whatever you'd like it to be. That being said, your idea does seem like something that could be built in to Roo, and so it's not crazy to expect that. It isn't something we've put on the roadmap because our primary focus is to get Roo to code better, and these supplementary uses are totally things we add in, but we haven't added that. I think that this might be a good opportunity for you to make your first detailed um, feature proposal on the
Okay,
Roo Code
I'll think
issues page.
about it. I I'm thinking about it. Like maybe like a button when things work. Because today I have been really trying to build an app with Roo, and I broke it like 10 times. But it worked like 3 times the way I wanted it to. So I thought, what if there's a button when things are good and they're working, we can hit it, and it creates a save that's easy to get back to, because checkpoints are awesome. You have to scroll so much to find the correct checkpoints, and it gets confusing. So what if we can even add a button so good checkpoints have a different color? I'm gonna write a detailed feature
Okay. Well,
proposal.
then maybe what we need is to refactor how we use checkpoints. We already have the mechanism for checkpoints. We just need the visual appearance of them and the frequency of them to be different. So, for example, someone mentioned placing it, before this before a situation, a specific interval instead of after an edit. That's a great idea. And so doing this, making them more central to workflow might actually accelerate the user's, what do you call it, pair vibe coding experience.
Yeah, that could be cool, because I broke my code so many times. It was
Have you tried Opus? It can unbreak things pretty effectively.
Yeah, but I'm afraid of spending too much money. I mean, you know,
A real fear. That's a very real and valid
I've been
fear.
cheaping out and using a lot of DeepSeek R1, and it's been coming up with the most fascinating bugs and telling me I cannot edit files, I cannot read files, and I'm like, yes, you can, and it's like, no, I can't, and it's been fun, arguing with
Well, if one
AI.
of my other guests wants to speak to the frustrations of using a model that appears to be very effective, but doesn't really get the whole multi-turn process of Roo Code.
Like if you are just embrace Opus, like at first you might see the price go up, like it is an expensive model, but I think you can end up with spending a lot less because it doesn't mess up as much. Like I did like this performance optimization the other day, and I was using what was it, 4.1 mini, I guess, and it just goes into spiral. Adding stuff that is not needed and unrelated to the optimization, and then I just like, oh, well, screw it, let's try Opus, and then it just solves it in like $4 or something, and I just get what I want. So yeah, it might look scary because it is expensive, but you ended up spending less because it gets the job done quicker.
$4 in 4 minutes instead of $4 in 4 hours, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that is so worth it. Yep.
But
it
I would
is.
caution anyone listening or watching, if you're using Opus, really take the time to make sure your prompts are thorough. 100% a thing. If you don't, that's when, if you do lazy coding where you're just like, try this, try that, it can work, but it gets very expensive with Opus. So sometimes it's better to group your thoughts together and make requests that make sense instead of just sort of dumping into the message box here, anything that comes to your mind. I guess, instead of doing the ADHD pair vibe coding, try to maybe sort your thoughts out and use ChatGPT to organize them before you dump them in.
Yeah, I have a feeling that
You said
vibe
it
coding and
yourself, right?
ChatGPT don't mix. Sorry.
Go
You
ahead.
said it yourself, right? You had 10 runs at trying to build that application. If you can get it done within one go using Opus, then it certainly saves time as well as money, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
time is money. That makes a lot of sense, of course. But I feel like Hannes said, when you code like you have ADHD, which I do, I still need to learn how to vibe code properly to not go bankrupt before I even get anything working, right?
Well, I like to call it pair vibe coding, because in your case, especially, you're very much looking at your end result. You're not just going, "Oh, does it work or not? Does it work or not?" You have the skills to understand your code. So you might not read every line of it, but you're probably looking at structure. When bugs come up, you're sort of getting an idea of what's going on. That's a little different than the swear word, which is vibe coding. So. Okay, well, it looks like we are at time here, everybody. I appreciate your questions. Once again, this is Roo Code Office Hours, Episode 9. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and I look forward to talking to you again next week. And thank you to my guests.